Okay, so I have Slackware installed on my micro SD. Yesterday, or very early this morning, I was trying to use a Raspberry Pi Zero, but I decided not to spend another day troubleshooting USB, OTG cables and all that. So I am using my Raspberry Pi 3, and I did install the Slackware 15, which is supported on the Raspberry Pi 3 hard float, which will say something like ARM v7 HF. So as you can see, it USB works right out of the box, no nonsense. I haven't really spent a lot of time on this. I've only gotten to the menu screen. I do know I have to set up a partition. As you could see on the last video I did get to this part, and then you would just press enter. Since my keyboard wasn't working, that was as far as I got. So I'm going to use the US keyboard, of course, since I have one of those. And basically you have a few options to set up a partition, and it goes through if you go right through the setup, it'll say that there's not a partition, and it says you have to use either C, I can't remember what it said, but oh yeah, F disk, or let me try that again here. I'll just type it in, setup, and you'll basically get this message saying there doesn't seem to be any partitions on this machine. I mean, it's just a clean format. It's a 1 gigabyte. I don't know if that's enough space, but the image is only like it's only like 90 megabytes. Not enough partitions on this machine of type Linux. You'll need to make at least one of these in order to install Linux. To do this, you'll need to leave setup and make the partitions using CF disk, MBR partitions, or CG disk GPT partitions. For more information, read the setup file from the next menu. But it will take you through that, and you can still go ahead. So one of the first options you'll see is set up your swap partitions. I have used the MBR before. I'm just not really sure which one I mean, it's more of just a test partition, so I'm not really I don't think it really has like a live boot from RAM option, considering it's a little bit different than the other, Puppy Linux or other live CDs. So read the setup help file. So one of the nice things here, unlike the other distros, where you do get to see what desktops you want to install, like KDE, XFC. So you do have some options here. And then you would just press spacebar if you're not going to install something. So if I don't want to use KDE, since it may take up a lot of memory, just press space and then it'll remove that from the installation. Okay, so as you can see, it says, before you can install software, complete the following tasks. Select your source media, which I assume is the same micro SD. Set up your partition, which software you want to install, and option to remap. Enter. I'm going to check that setup file again. You're running a real multitasking operating system now, so you're not confined to the installation program. Virtual. Right now the screen you're looking at is probably the virtual console number 1, dev TT1 in Linux week. Uses several consoles. Partitioning. Okay, so it gives you quite a bit of instructions on how to install it. If you have a newer machine that uses GPT, all UEFI machines do, or you wish to use GPT, skip to the section on below. Now again, this is okay, for the purposes, one Linux partition, swap partition, 8 gig or more. So this doesn't really seem to be specific to the Raspberry Pi distribution. It seems more like just a general setup file for all Slackware ISOs. So in this case, there's probably a more specific tutorial for the Raspberry Pi, since you're dealing with the micro SD, and you know, you may only want to use a certain amount of you know, storage space. And not to say that, you know, 8 gigabytes is not not to say that 8 gigabyte micro SD is expensive or anything, but if you just want to boot something up to you know, access a desktop with just a very minimal, you can definitely fit that under 1 gigabyte as a live boot from RAM. Like the Slataz one, although with that it's easier to just use the Debian file that they have with the Raspberry Pi OS. But in any case, you know, there are smaller ones that can run on just 2 gigabytes. So yeah, overall I like this. It seems like it has a lot of support for the Raspberry Pi. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more you can do, but I kind of like it a little more than the Diet Pi, just based on how much more, you know, resources they have built in on it. And so, like, if I wanted to, like, I don't really want to setup swap. Yes, you want to continue. I prefer not to use it if it's going to slow down the reading from the SD. Would you like to add these? No. Well, maybe you do, because sometimes if you want to add files to it, but I'll just skip that for now. And then target partition, no. Source media. So you can choose which one you want to. Technically, it's a USB, so I mean, I could select that. Although I'm thinking it doesn't know that there's a USB already plugged in. It just treats it as the select source media, install selected. So if you try to install it, it's going to say that something hasn't been set up. I probably didn't set up something. I'm positive, but anyways, it looks nice to have at least something where you can at least use your keyboard. I mean, you can actually learn a lot about how to use a computer if you have something like that. Whereas with the Raspberry Pi Zero, you know, if it can't support every third-party USB OTG cable ever manufactured, then the chances of one of those not being compatible are increasingly likely. So yeah, Raspberry Pi or any system on a chipboard that has a built-in USB, at least 2 for your keyboard and your mouse, are going to make it a lot more usable for just, you know, learning how to use a computer. Obviously, if you know how to use a computer and it's not your first one, then it's not going to really matter. But I mean, if you're just buying a Raspberry Pi Zero, you know, I personally wouldn't want to deal with all that USB. But yeah, I'm gonna try to install some more stuff on this, and maybe I'll make another video. Thanks for watching.